Hello, hello, hello. I think we're live. We are live. We're definitely live. Always have to double check. But yeah, anyway, welcome to the channel. Sorry, as always, I think I say this every week. I'm all over the place in terms of my head and brain, not in any bad way. It's just, if you're not aware, you probably are aware if you found this channel. I have another channel, which is Mark Ellis Reviews, and that is where I review tech. It's where I started on YouTube. And you know, silly me thinking that it would be. Well, I never thought it would be easy, but I never realized quite how hard it would be, particularly when we get to this time of the year, which is known as what's it called? Techtober is next month. There's a name for September as well, and it's all to do with the fact that seemingly every single tech company releases stuff now, all at once, without any or very little warning anyway, particularly Apple. And yeah, as tech content creators and reviewers, we have to deal with it, which is a lovely problem to have. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of work. So today, as I shoot this or film this or whatever you want to call this, live stream this, it's all about the iPhone 15, which literally arrived earlier today. Nearly missed the delivery. That was fun. And I have to do one of these very quick, excuse me, very quick turnaround videos, which I don't enjoy doing. It's all a bit frantic and yeah, but there you go. So that's completely irrelevant because it has nothing to do with this live stream. As always, guys, a bit of housekeeping. I'm not looking at the chat at the moment just to ensure I don't get distracted. But please do fill it with questions. So as always on these live streams, I'll start with a kind of just a topic that's at the top of my mind, just to kind of talk you through that. And then after that, we'll do a Q&A. So you can ask me any questions about the things that I talk about during this little ramble at the start, or anything you've got in, any questions you've had for me for a little while, or things that have been rumbling around in your head about content creation and running this kind of business yourself. Please do fill the chat with questions. That the questions, I shouldn't say this, but they do make these live streams worth it. Hopefully my preamble is useful as well, but I do love your questions. So ask away. Also, I'm trying this at a very different time. So normally it's 4 p.m.-ish when I do the live stream in the UK, which I know isn't ideal for everyone, particularly the US people that want to tune in. So apologies for that. It's very difficult to find a day during the week when I can actually do this a bit later, having a young family. But this evening, because I'm here filming stuff for the iPhone 15 Pro Max video, it makes sense to use the time wisely and just try a 9 p.m. live stream. So hopefully this is going to work a little bit better for people. Two other pieces of housekeeping. Firstly, if you haven't joined the Substack newsletter yet, please do give it a go. It's completely free. You can remove yourself if you don't enjoy it. But every Friday morning, I send out a newsletter, a traditional written newsletter, not video. Again, behind the scenes stuff. It's basically, it's a bit of a journal. I kind of treat it as a journal. Something will have happened. Lots of things happen every week, but there's always something in particular that happens each week that makes me think, I want to write about this. And Substack is my kind of, vehicle for doing that along with these live streams. So down below, you'll find the link to Substack. Also, if you weren't aware, I am redesigning the academy that I've been running. So I ran the Medium Academy 6 or so months ago now, which was very successful. We've got a lovely cohort of people who are involved in that. But the next academy is going to be completely, well, it's basically taking this entire business and opening the bonnet. You don't open a bonnet like that. Opening the bonnet and showing you exactly how everything works, how I've built it, how I work with sponsors, how I plan content, how I make content, how all of that content links together. It's very exciting. I have a team working on this because there's so much going on. It's not something I can do completely on my own. And to be fair, I need help in getting word out there about it. So there's a team at the moment working on this, including my new general manager, Niall. And basically, it's down to them at the moment to raise awareness of the academy. The next cohort for the academy will kick off in December. It's going to have a brand new name. It's not going to be called the Mark Ellis Academy. It's something else for very good reason. But all the details will be released fairly soon. If you want to hear about that, if you want to be the first to know what it's all about and how much it costs and all that good stuff, hopefully definitely good stuff. Um, once again, in the description, there's a little link where you can sign up to, where you can access the kind of homepage about it, and then add your email address and hear more as soon as that detail becomes available. So that's all the boring housekeeping, not boring, the really interesting housekeeping stuff out of the way. Um, I am fueled by coffee this evening because I need to be. I have a fancy coffee machine that's been delivered today, which is a review unit. I've got a coffee machine review unit. This job just gets better and better. So I'm fueled by coffee, which is good. I have a Prodigy t-shirt on, which is even better. And we're ready to start talking about content creation. Right. I promise this will all make sense. Okay, so the topic for today is all about vlogging. And I've talked quite a bit about vlogging on these live streams over the last few weeks. And there's a very good reason for that, which is that I'm doing more and more vlogging style content on the Mark Ellis Reviews channel because I enjoy doing it. It gets me out of this studio. It means I can go and explore the UK and explore the rest of the world occasionally. And it just makes the content a bit more interesting, a bit more dynamic. And I get nice comments about it. So, for instance, this week I went to the Peak District, and while I was there for 2 days. Basically, the primary reason for going there was to make a video about the Apple Watch Ultra. This is the Apple Watch Ultra 1, but the video is about the Apple Watch Ultra 2 versus the 1. And to do it, I thought let's make a video in a setting that kind of befits that product. And that is the Peak District. It's hiking, it's walking, it's doing some exercise. So that was the main reason for going there. But because I was there for 2 days and I'm paying for a hotel room, I wanted to maximize my time there. So the second day, once I'd finished filming the Apple Watch video, I made another video about the iPad, which was published today. So if you look on the Mark Ellis Reviews channel today, you'll see it's basically a buying guide about the iPad for this year, because I think it's a very difficult time to buy an iPad when we have no idea what Apple's going to do next. But I made that video in the Peak District, walking through fields and climbing up mountains, which has nothing to do with iPads, absolutely nothing to do with an iPad buying guide. But I did it anyway, and I did it again because it looks dynamic, it's a bit more interesting, it gives me something to talk about. It sets the video apart from other people. I'm not blaming people for doing this because I do it myself, but from other videos where people are just sitting there at a desk like this, or standing, and talking to the camera about the product. It just sets it apart a little bit. And while I was doing this week, I suddenly thought there's something here to talk about for Solo Club, because the process I've kind of unwittingly built around that vlogging process, around that vlogging style, is actually fairly watertight, if I don't mind saying so myself. It works really well. Sometimes there are issues, but generally speaking, it works fantastically. And that is because I've nailed down this process. And if you know me, I'm incredibly boring about processes. I work on them to the nth degree, and if I find a process that works, I keep it as it is, and I talk about it all the time on these live streams. So the vlogging style that I've created for Mark Ellis Reviews has a process behind it, and that's what I'm getting there, aren't I? That is what I'm going to show you today, or talk about. So the first thing is the gear, and I did talk about this in a bit more detail a couple of weeks ago, but very, very simply, and simply is the word here, and simple, it's all about basically paring everything down. Because I used to go out with a camera like this. I used to take a great big camera, great big tripod, massive mic, and it was just horrendous to walk around with, partly because you look weird, but also because it's very cumbersome, heavy, and you have to fiddle around with ND filters and all that stuff. I've got rid of that completely. And basically, to capture my audio and the video, all I take with me is this, which is a DJI Osmo Action 4. Other action cams are available, but this one is the one that works for me very nicely. This sits on this extendable pole, which I can use. Pole? Is it a pole? It probably is. Whatever it's called, which you can use as a selfie stick. So we can kind of do that. That is the camera. That is what I use as the camera. It shoots in 4K. It's got fantastic image stabilization, great dynamic range, etc., etc. It works brilliantly. For audio, I've talked about these a lot, apologies. I use the DJI mic. You can see a theme developing here. And on top of that, I put its little hairdo, which is the what is called the dead cat, which basically deals with any wind noise. So I take that, attach it to my top, or to in this week's case, I kind of attach it to the rucksack that I'm using, and that's it. Audio, video, done. And the great thing about this setup is that it's one touch operation, or three touch actually. So what I do to start filming, I get this in position, I just hit the record button on the top. That takes 3-4 seconds to start recording. So it turns itself on and starts recording straight away. On here, in fact, it is two touch, because when you take this out of the box, it's on. So all you have to do is press the record button. So record on there, video's going. Record on here, your audio's going. You can just start waffling on about whatever it is you're waffling on about. And when you're finished, press the same buttons again, and you're done. Everything turns off, everything is recorded, and away you go. You just keep doing that as a process, basically. So in terms of paring the gear down, that is what I've done. And the result of that is that I never have to worry about the gear, because it just works. And there's nothing worse, and trust me, I've been in this position so many times, there's nothing worse than being pegged back by gear, whether it be, like I say, ND filters, or ISO settings, or worrying about exposure and mic levels and all that sort of stuff. I don't have any of that problem with this. So the gear plays a massive role, an absolutely huge role. The other thing that's very important for these vlogging adventures is the prep. And beyond all this stuff, I've made the mistakes here. So I've gone out into the field with this vlogging idea and a rough script and all that sort of stuff, and I've picked a location, but I haven't planned, firstly, where I'm going at that location. I've kind of got out of the car, got off the train, and just thought, right, okay, now what? So the first thing I do is always plan out a route. And this week it was relatively easy because I got someone else to do it. But also this was based around a hike. So I asked Niall, my general manager, to find a couple of hikes in the Peak District, which were long enough to spend the day doing them, basically, and pretty enough to make the whole video look nice. And he found two absolutely fantastic walks. And that meant that I had a route. I knew how long the route was each time. And basically, I could take those two routes and map what I was doing around the route to the video, if that makes sense. So I have this rough script that I work from, which I'll come on to in a moment. And I know that by halfway through the day, I'll be X miles into the hike, and I should be that far through the video. This all sounds a bit anal and a bit, why are you going into that much detail? But trust me, the worst thing you can do is go without this plan. Because if you go without this plan, you'll spend most of your time during that day looking for somewhere to film, and then thinking about what you should be filming and whether or not you should wait until a bit later to film something. And again, I've run into this issue before. You get to the end of the day and you've only done a quarter or maybe a third of the video, and it's a horrible feeling because you can't really go back and do it again, because you're out there and you've only got a limited amount of time. It's just a horrendous thing. So the prep is really important, right down to things like the accommodation. Where are you staying? Is the hotel, or I stayed in a pub this time, which was very nice. Is the accommodation near a nice scenic part of the world where you can get a nice time-lapse video or a drone shot? All this stuff has to go into the planning, because then when you get in the car and leave that day, everything in theory is set up for success. Things can still go wrong, obviously, but generally speaking, this has worked for me fantastically. The next thing that is absolutely crucial, and again, I've made the mistake here of not doing this in the past, is having some form of script on hand. And I've tried also all sorts of different methods with this, from having a printout of something to using Notion while I'm out on the go. Neither of those things work for obvious reasons. The thing that does work brilliantly is a very simple notes app. And for me, I just use Apple Notes on my iPhone. So I take the rough script, and I don't script everything. I basically take the original blog post on which the video is based and bullet point it out. So I take that blog post, bullet point out all the paragraphs, and that becomes the script that I riff from, basically, when I'm making these videos. So what I do when I'm doing the vlogging style videos is take that script, stick it into Apple Notes on here, and then rather than having bullet points, I have a checkbox. So I turn it into a to-do list. So every single chapter heading, and also within the chapters, the individual bullet points, the individual elements that I want to talk about are all there as tasks, basically. So what I do as I'm going around my route, talking to myself, I finish doing one particular section, and I hit a checkbox. Now, again, this sounds incredibly boring, incredibly anal, incredibly pointless, and why are you going into that much detail? But again, trust me, I've done it the other way where I don't have that, or I'm relying on something like Notion, which is a bit more reliant on an internet connection, which when you're hiking isn't always there. Just having a very simple note with checkboxes against each thing that you want to cover saves the day. And it does two things. The first thing is that it gives you a sense of pace, and it gives you a sense of where you are in the video. So if I've spent the morning filming, I can very quickly look back at my note and see how many sections I've ticked off and see how many are left, which is a great way to know if you're on course to film everything you need to film that day. And secondly, it's just very satisfying because this is hard work. Walking around, it may not sound it, but walking around filming yourself, talking to yourself, making sure you're getting the point across properly, telling a good story, not missing stuff out, getting facts right, and all that sort of stuff is really hard work. So when you've done one section and you tick it off, I love it. It's a wonderful feeling. You feel like you're getting towards the end or closer to the end each time. So that's fantastic. Don't look past that point, guys. That's really important if you're going to be doing this sort of vlogging. Go with a plan and go with your note with your script on it as well. In terms of being in the field and filming, it's quite hard work, but the more you do it, the more practice. Practice makes perfect, as with anything, really. I found that it's best just to get it done. And what I mean by that is that you're going to encounter things that are annoying. So you'll encounter other people. It's not their fault they're annoying, but they will get in the way. If you're particularly conscious of talking to yourself in public, that can be tricky. I've pretty much got over that now, depending on where I am. It is a bit weird walking around a big kind of hiking route and coming across ramblers talking to yourself. I find that a bit odd. Weirdly, I find it easier in very busy places, in cities and things like that, but it is a bit strange in the middle of nowhere. Imagine if you came across a guy, if you were going out for a normal hike, you're not a YouTuber, you're out for a normal hike and you come across a guy talking to himself or talking to a camera. It looks weird. But regardless of that, because you have this defined amount of time and this plan to get through, you just have to go with it. So what I tend to do is just block out everything around me. As soon as I start filming, I block things out and just go for it, basically. And that does take practice. The other thing is to look for interesting angles. And what I mean by that is interesting compositions for the camera. So a great example of this actually is when you're walking and talking. A really good trick for this, because if you're like me, throughout your video, you'll be doing jump cuts. So you'll be talking, and then the next sentence is a cut to another. You might be cutting out a breath or a cough or something like that, or a swear word. What you can do with that to make it a little bit more dynamic and not too jarring for the viewer, keep swapping the hand that you have the vlogging camera in. So you might be walking along like this, talking to it on your right hand side, finish the sentence, and then switch it to your left hand side and start talking it to that left hand side. If you look at my latest my iPad video that I mentioned a moment ago, the one that's just gone live on Marcos Reviews, you'll see me doing that. You'll see the angle switching, and it just makes it a little less jarring rather than having a jump cut that goes straight to the exact same composition. And in terms of compositions, look for interesting things to place your camera on. And that's a great thing about these action cams. You can, as you can see, take them off your selfie stick and stick them, excuse the pun, literally or pretty much anywhere. So on ledges, on gate posts, put them in interesting places, because it just adds, again, a bit of dynamism, is that the right word, to the video. It makes it more interesting. It doesn't, it's not just you walking along talking to yourself like that, because that can get a bit boring for the viewer. And as we know, viewers these days have very limited attention spans. So just try to find interesting places to put this this camera each time, basically. But that's pretty much it in terms of the in the field stuff, the actual filming of it. You just go for it, just crack on. Post-production, again, I'm very boring about this, but for good reason. I hate the thought of finishing a vlogging shoot and then jumping in the car and having all of the footage in here. So this is my memory card holder. So in here, I have my SD cards, my big SD cards, and my little, oh God, no. That'd be funny, wouldn't it, losing this now? So my big SD cards and also my micro SD cards, they all live in here. But like I say, I hate the idea of the footage that I've just spent an entire day out in the field shooting only being on these, because what if I lose this? What if something happens in terms of the memory cards? One of them fails or something. It's not a nice thought. So what I do as soon as possible, and this is normally in the car park afterwards or in a pub or in a coffee shop, as soon as possible, is offload all of the footage from, well, from the audio from the mic and all of the footage from here, from the camera, onto the Mac, onto my external SSD editing drive, and then I've got it in two places. It's still on here. I don't wipe these at all, because the other thing is you could very easily accidentally format these. Again, horrible. So I leave it on here for as long as possible, but equally, I get it onto the Mac as quickly as possible as well. And also, if I've got time, I will go as far as going into Final Cut Pro and importing that footage, syncing up the audio, even potentially color grading stuff and getting it ready to edit. Which is, I don't always have the time for that, but this week I did. So after the second hike, I found a lovely pub, grabbed myself a pint and sat there and got all of this stuff done. So transferred the footage, arranged it all in Final Cut Pro, and sat back and enjoyed my pint because I knew I had a backup. And when I came to do the edit, it was all there waiting, which is, again, a wonderful feeling. Again, I've made the mistake of not doing this stuff. I've never lost footage, thank God, touch wood. But equally, I have got to the point where it's been 2 or 3 days after the shoot. I've come into the studio, imported all the footage, and then suddenly you're met with all this stuff, all these clips and audio recordings and things, which 3 or 4 days later make no sense. The order you shot them in might be a bit strange. You can't quite remember which links, what audio links up with what video, and it's just horrendous. So if you do that process when it's fresh in your mind on the same day, it just saves so much heartache. Your future self, trust me, will love you for it. That is my vlogging process. I hope that made sense. Like I say, it's been a long day. I'm fueled by coffee, which probably doesn't help. But I wanted to kind of give you an insight into how I'm making these vlogging videos behind the scenes, because I do think genuinely it's quite interesting. And equally, I do think you can get it wrong. I think it's very easy to get this vlogging thing wrong, which, trust me, you don't want to do. Right, I'm going to come to the comments now, guys. So, as always, if you have got any questions, dump them into the chat and I will answer them. It's Friday night. Well, it's Friday night for me. It's Friday it's Friday somewhere, basically. And so, we should all be in fairly decent moods. So ask me anything. Just go for it. I can see lots of regular faces here, guys. Hi, Johan. Hello, Alan. No way. Hi, all. Just to could put it on here. Hi, all. Just to say hi and press like button. Thank you very much, whoever you are. No way. That's very kind of you. Johan, you're about to say you made it on time. Oh, Johan sent this at 3:53 p.m. Earlier this afternoon. So, Johan, you were on time, because normally it would have been 4 p.m. UK time. So you were actually on time. Thank you. I assume you didn't sit there waiting. I'm sure you didn't. Any questions, guys? What have we got here? I'm gonna have a quick drink of water. So Johan's saying that your first day in the life vlogging video went live today. How did it go? Did you do anything that I've just described in terms of the process? Was any of that useful? Is what I'm asking, I suppose. Did you have any problems, or were you surprised by how well it went or how badly it went? Hopefully not the latter, but yeah, tell us how you got on. Here we go. The lack of planning was my mistake for the last 2 weeks. Great tips on a note with check boxes. Yeah, the planning thing. I mean, I plan everything in this business fairly well, but I think the thing that I always really concentrate on when it comes to planning are these kind of remote shoots, because more can go wrong when I'm out in the field. Basically, if the camera stops working, or if I forget to include a certain or a very important part of the script, that's a big problem, because I can't go back. If I'd forgotten something yesterday, I can't really go back to the Peak District today and film it again. It doesn't quite work like that. It's very much you're there and you have to get it done there and then. So, yeah, pre-planning is really, really important. It really is. Hello, Gavin Davies. Johan, after trying to film B-roll with the iPhone, I invested in an Insta Go 3 this week and love it. The Insta 360 stuff is fantastic. I wonder, why did you decide to ditch the iPhone though? What was it? Was it not quite working for you? Because I use the iPhone more than you think actually for B-roll, and it's still the best phone I think for B-roll and even filming yourself. Actually, I think it's it's better than every Android phone. I love Android phones, but none of them come close when it comes to video. Come on, guys, hit me with some questions. There must be something. Doesn't have to relate to vlogging at all. It can relate to literally anything you want. I promise as well in the future, for future live streams, I won't keep talking about the DJI mics. I am a little bit obsessed with these but for good reason. They are just incredible pieces of kit. I've been so happy with them. Full disclosure, I was sent these by DJI. And I didn't have to buy these, so I'm very lucky in that respect. This video isn't sponsored by DJI, obviously, but they're just such a good example. I always think they look quite funny with a little hairdo on as well. But they're such a good example of a piece of kit that just works. It does everything asked of it. The battery, again, touch wood, has never failed me. The storage is just loads. There's plenty for several days shooting. And just the way that you can very easily attach them. So if you don't know, they've got this little magnet that sits on the back. And the idea being, if you've got nothing, because it has got a clip on it, so it does have a little clip. So, but if you've got nothing to clip onto, you can take this magnet, put it behind your shirt. There we go. Bosh, done. It looks like I was about to give a member of the Prodigy a funny hairdo. But yeah, they're just great. I love them. But I will stop talking about them, I promise. Also, they're quite robust, he says, carrying on talking about them. These aren't officially water resistant, but I have got them wet, and so far, no trouble whatsoever. After the Rode Pro mic release, do you think DJI will release an updated version of the ones that you have, which is these? I hope so, because the new Rode mics, which are very similar to these, have a 32-bit float, which I think I've talked about before on this live stream. Basically, that is it's a little, if you understand what RAW photography is about. So when you take a RAW photo, which basically contains a lot more information than a JPEG, so you can go into Lightroom afterwards and get details out of the shadows and all that sort of stuff. 32-bit float recording for audio is very similar. Basically, you can shout into the mic, or you can be very, very quiet, and it retains all of the detail without distortion and without losing detail when you're very quiet. I've never used 32-bit float recording at all, but there's been several times when I've thought it would be really handy just to get rid of peaking and stuff like that. And yeah, these new Rode Pro mics have, amazingly, they're about the same size as this. They have 32-bit float recording. I think it's inevitable that we'll get the same thing from DJI relatively soon, hopefully. I don't know. I mean, they haven't told me, but I really hope they do. Gavin, I have a Sony ZV-1 and an iPhone 14 Pro Max. What should I be using for everyday shooting? The Sony ZV-1, because Sony releases so many cameras every single hour, it feels, I need to remind myself of which one the ZV-1 is. Let me just have a quick look. Sony ZV-1 is... should know this off the top of my head. Being a Sony guy, I should know this straight away, really. Yes, it's the one that I've got. So it's the little fixed lens one, isn't it? That's a really good question. Everyday shooting, I mean, that depends what you mean by everyday shooting, I suppose, really. But the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you're always going to have that with you. That's the first thing. So it's going to be in your, I assume anyway, it's going to be in your pocket. As I mentioned a moment ago, the video quality is absolutely fantastic. It won't let you down either. I've again, touch wood, doing lots of that today. I've never had an issue with an iPhone when it comes to not recording something. I did have that with this. So I think on Wednesday, I I did what I mentioned a moment ago. So I hit the record button. It came on, and I thought it was filming, but it took me probably about a minute or so to realise that it was frozen. So the image was actually frozen, and I couldn't. I had to basically take the battery out. I had to lift open this flap, whip out the battery to kind of hard reset it, put the battery back in, and then obviously that video file was corrupted. It was no use at all. That's quite rare. That's the only time I've ever had that with the DJI Osmo Action, but I've never had that with an iPhone. And like I say, I do quite a lot of filming with the iPhone, for both YouTube but also short form stuff for Instagram and TikTok and that kind of thing. And it's never let me down. So I think in terms of everyday shooting, if you want something that's always going to be with you and reliable, I'd use the iPhone. The ZV-1 is a great camera. The problem with it is that it's another thing to carry around. So you've got, although it's quite small, you've got to put it in your pocket, and also it's got an annoying focal length, which I think is 24 mil. Is that what I think? Whatever it is, it's a bit too tight. Whereas with the iPhone, you can at least go fairly wide. I just think for everyday shooting, again, depending on what you mean by that, I'd stick with your phone. As long as you've got enough storage, then I'd go for it. Hello, Richard, who's got a question. Can you recommend an external microphone to use with an iPhone 14 Pro Max? I can't, unfortunately, because I've not really tested any. I know you can get these lav mics, the kind of lav mics that do plug in to the Lightning port or the USB-C port as it is now. I used to have one of those, and that worked quite good on a very old iPhone a few years ago. I wouldn't worry about compatibility with the iPhone, Richard, and the reason for that, I get this question quite a lot. So again, going back to my setup, when I'm vlogging, I have this for video and I have this for audio. Now, a lot of people say, okay, that's great, but how do they link up? Is there some kind of wireless protocol going on, for audio and video? And the answer to that is no. There is no link between these two devices. I basically record the video on that, record the audio on that, and then I rely on Final Cut Pro to link the two together. And it basically syncs. If you use Final Cut Pro, you'll know what I'm talking about. But every video editor will have some form of syncing involved, where you take a separate audio track and a separate video track, and as long as the video track has audio on it as well. So these are both recording audio. That's recording audio, and that's recording audio. As long as that's happening, Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, etc., they will use the audio to sync the two together. So coming back to your question, Richard, it doesn't matter, actually. I just get the best mic you can afford. If it's one of if it's the DJI mic or the Rode mic Pros, fantastic. If it's something cheaper, whatever you get, and just rely on the video editing software that you use to sync up the two, the image and the audio. That is what I would do. Don't worry about compatibility. That is one of those things which I don't think many people realize. I think when you first get into this, I think people assume that all this stuff has to link up. That was the case a long time ago. And obviously the whole point of those big clapperboards is to have a clap sync, which is when, again, you don't have to do. They still do this. I think a lot of YouTube channels do this as well, where they'll turn everything on. They'll have perhaps 4 cameras running and 4 mics or whatever. They'll turn everything on and go. And the reason they do that is to create a transient, a very big spike in the audio waveform that you can then use on all the devices, all the separate audio recordings to line it all up and sync everything up. You don't have to do that these days because the software like Final Cut Pro and all the rest of them that I've just mentioned, they have brilliant built-in AI machine learning that matches all this stuff together. So it's never not worked for me. It's always worked really well. It just makes our lives so much easier. I hope that helped. That was a long answer to your question, Richard, but hopefully that helps. Any more questions, guys? 34 minutes in. I never want to end these early either. It's something I love doing these live streams, even though this one feels like I've been rambling a bit. Apologies if it's a bit rambly. Like I say, it's been a very busy week, and also I had a long weekend, so I had 4 days off over last weekend, which was very important to recharge the batteries. But as anyone will know, when you take a bit of time off work, particularly after a very busy time, leading up to it, and then a very busy time coming back afterwards, it takes a while for your brain to get into gear. So, yeah, apologies if it's a bit rambling. It always is, though, to be fair. Gavin, should I be using software for recording video on my iPhone or just the standard Apple software? Just use the standard Apple software, Gavin. You can get apps. There's lots of apps out there that give you more access to the features within the camera system. But again, all you're doing then is introducing complexity. And going right back to the start of this, when I was talking about this setup that I have here, it's literally 2 buttons and I start shooting. For instance, the video on here, you can do things. You can shoot in log, so you can shoot in a flat color profile and all that sort of stuff, which gives you more dynamic range, more color grading possibilities in post production. But all of that, even talking about it, then all I'm thinking is that's going to take forever to edit, and no one cares. The only person who cares about that is me. People aren't going to watch 2 versions of my YouTube video, one that has been edited and color graded to the nth degree, and the other one that has not been touched at all. It's straight out of camera. No one's going to look at the 2 of them and think the former is the better one to watch. They don't care. What matters is the content. So, Gavin, I just use it. Just hit record. Turn your phone on, go into your camera, hit record. Bosh, as they say. Done. Hello, Alan. How is the Solo Academy going? Yeah, you probably missed it at the start, Alan, but yeah, it's going really well. I have a team working on the new academy, and more details will follow very soon. I know you're on the list, so you'll definitely hear about it first. But again, if anyone watching this or tuning into this now hasn't added themselves to the academy mailing list, there is a link in the description. But it's coming on well, and more details will come soon. I promise. No problem, Gavin. I'm glad that was useful. A great example, actually, of overcomplicating things is this, which is the Sony Xperia 1 5. Is that right? They love their weird naming conventions, Sony. This is a brilliant smartphone, and it also has the most bonkers camera I've ever seen on a smartphone. You can basically turn it into a cinema camera. And again, going back to Gavin's question, you do that by using a specific app, which is a Sony branded app. But it gives you all these controls, and it's ludicrous. It's funny. It's that complicated and nuts that it's genuinely funny. But it's just so much work just to shoot some video. Keep it simple. I say that a lot, don't I, on this, but there's a reason for it. The more I've been a YouTuber, the more I've realized that the simpler things are, the more productive you are, the quicker you'll get videos out, the better the videos are as well, because you're spending more time on the content than you are all the technical stuff. And particularly, I mean, at times like this, when on the other side of this fence, Marketplace Reviews, it's just so crazy in terms of product releases and sponsorship requirements and embargoed products and events and all this stuff. Anything that gets in the way of getting through that and producing decent content needs to go. And I'm still to this day removing things from the process, and it makes a massive difference. It really, really does. Keep it simple. Any other questions? I have a feeling we might be signing off slightly early on this Friday, which is no problem with that at all. It is getting quite late in the UK, and I do have an early start tomorrow morning because of the iPhone again. Thanks, Tim Cook. Love you, really. Here we go. Oh, no way is still here. Sony fan here. I'm a big Sony fan as well. You're an Xperia 5.4 owner. I love Sony, but I hate their naming conventions. It's just so confusing. You agree on the menus, maybe too complex. Agree also on the product release dates. Yeah, and while we're talking about Sony as well, the volume of cameras they release every year is mind-blowing. I think I mentioned earlier that it feels like there's a new camera every week, and every new camera is just a tiny bit different to the one it replaces, and then equally very similar to another camera in their lineup. Someone just needs to tell them to stop. It's like people who keep having kids. There's a reason this keeps happening, guys. Yeah. That's a good point. The menus on this, really complicated. And also, you'd think that the menus on a smartphone, a Sony smartphone that is centered around camera stuff, would match the menus on a Sony camera. No, they're completely different. Everything's all over the place. I can only assume they have different teams working on each thing, and none of them talk to each other. Who knows? Um, any more questions, guys? Before I sign off, I'll give you another 5 minutes, and then we'll get back to our Fridays, which for me will be just be going to bed. I think we may be there, might we? It's all gone a bit quiet. It is Friday, to be fair. You probably all want to go down the pub, don't you? Don't blame you, really. Richard, you need to get a new monitor. Have you tried the new 5K Samsung monitor? I'm also looking at the Apple Studio monitor. Currently, I'm using an iMac Pro and two BenQ. I never know how to pronounce that. I need to know how to pronounce it because I'm doing a review of a BenQ monitor soon. The only one that I have experience of out of that list, Richard, is the Apple Studio. What's it called? Studio Display. That's it. The Studio I've not used any of the other ones. Even the iMac Pro I never experienced, although the iMac Pro is basically the same as a normal iMac. I've not tried the 5K Samsung. I've heard good things about it. I do have a BenQ monitor downstairs, as I mentioned, which is going to be a review unit soon. The Studio Display is a very good monitor, but it's massively overpriced, and it has a terrible webcam, which almost ruins it. So the others might be probably better spending your money on the other ones, I think, or one of the other ones. Thanks for a great session and top tips. I'll be using them in the week ahead. Thank you, Johan. You're a regular, and I genuinely hope this is helping you in your own vlogging efforts. I think we're going to wrap up there, guys, because yeah, it's getting late, and Gavin's saying he likes his Studio Display. It's a great. Don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic monitor. Brilliant image quality. Probably the sharpest you can get really at that size. But it's just very expensive. It's hard to recommend because it's so expensive. Okay, guys. I think we're done with the questions. Sorry, this was a bit rambly and a bit all over the place. I feel like I don't know if I've kind of done it justice in terms of my vlogging process. Hopefully, I have. Some of you are saying it's been good. That's reassuring. I promise the next one I'll be a bit more refreshed, less full of coffee, a bit more back into things as well because I have no choice. We've got some new people coming in. This always happens at the end, doesn't it? Hi, Seb. A rewatch. Yeah, if you fancy rewatching it, go for it. I'm not convinced it was my best performance really, but for that reason, you might want to watch it and have a bit of a laugh. Who knows? Again, guys, if you've not signed up to the Substack newsletter list yet, the link is in the description. And if you want to know more about the Academy, which is coming, all being well, it is definitely happening. There's lots of things happening with it. It's 100% coming back. It's whether or not it's going to be in December or January is the kind of thing at the moment, but we're pushing for it in December. But whenever it arrives, it will be worth it because it's going to be an incredibly in-depth look at this business. So if you want to know more about the Academy, again, there's a link in the description. Gavin says it's always great. Thank you, Gavin. You're way too kind. But I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I'm going to sign off now and go to bed because I need to. Enjoy the rest of your Fridays, guys. I'm going to do that thing where I end the stream and then pretend to walk over there. What I actually this is what happens. It looks like I'm saying goodbye and then walking off into the distance. Happily ever after. What I actually do is end the stream, walk over there, stand still, wait for the stream or hope the stream is finished, and then kind of gingerly come back round and turn the camera off. Every time I do that, I think I'm going to come around here and the live stream is still going to be going. That hasn't happened yet, so hopefully you won't know. Anyway, guys, have a fantastic Friday, fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you next week, probably at an earlier time, I think. Cheers.